It's awards season, baby. Let's talk about award shows. Right off the bat, this is not going to be the most net positive video. I think it's pretty clear at this point to anyone who pays attention to this kind of thing that some of the decisions made by the groups behind awards like the Oscars and the Golden Globes are questionable at best. That being said, I do have to admit that award shows were a huge part of my life for many years, and they played a big role in why I got so interested in movies in the first place. My awards season fascination began with the 2013 Oscars. I was a freshman in high school and I had watched 6 of the 9 movies that were nominated for Best Picture that year, so I basically considered myself an expert. I remember getting my mom to take me to see Silver Linings Playbook and thinking it was just about the coolest movie I'd ever seen. I was definitely not taking a critical eye towards the award shows themselves. I assumed that if a movie had been nominated for an Oscar, it automatically meant that it was good. And I was willing to defend the winners because, of course, if they'd won, it meant they deserved to. That's just how things work. And therefore, I should watch as many award season movies as possible because they were the cream of the crop. And if I liked movies, that's what I had to do. To be fair to my younger self, I still think a lot of the movies that I watched in my Oscar movie watching mania were good movies. Her is still one of my favorite movies, and I doubt I would have watched it if it hadn't been nominated for Best Picture in 2014. Same with Whiplash in 2015 and Arrival in 2017. And I'll admit it, I still really like La La Land. There are very few movies that I actively regret watching just because they were Best Picture nominees. I do regret watching American Sniper, which I mostly watched because I was in love with Bradley Cooper at the time. And my dad definitely still regrets watching Boyhood with me the year that was nominated, which I know because he still complains about it. But I also never actually watched all of the nominees. I think the closest I ever got was in 2015 and 2017. Both years I watched 8 of the 9 nominees. My apologies to the movie Selma, which I genuinely would still like to see, and Lion, which I have never heard mentioned by a single person since that year. But when I was 15 years old, I had no desire to watch Philomena, so I skipped that one. Whatever. I read all the predictions and then I watched the movies that were the front runners for the big awards, and that was good enough for me. Until 2018 and the 91st Academy Awards, when the frontrunner to win was Green Book, and I found myself in a bit of a moral conundrum. At that point, I had seen the Best Picture winner for the past 5 years, and a large part of my personality in the months from December to February was just talking about awards season. But I had also read way too many think pieces about how overly simplified and problematic Green Book's depiction of race relations was, and I didn't really want to pay to see it or spend my time watching it since I definitely could have seen it for free. So I didn't. A crazy concept. And then, even crazier, I don't think I even watched the ceremony, and I really didn't feel like I was missing anything. So 2018 definitely marked the big shift in my personal relationship with award season. Obviously, Green Book's victory in 2018 was not the first time I was critical of the Oscars. I was very aware of the Oscars so white controversies in 2015 and 2016 when all 20 of the actors nominated were white. And I was very aware that the Academy rarely nominates female directors, and that it awards actors who portray disability and queerness when they themselves are not disabled or queer. But I never really questioned the movies themselves. I thought they aren't nominating enough diverse movies, but that doesn't mean the movies they are nominating are bad. Even if the casting choices in the movies are bad, the movies themselves aren't bad. They deserve these nominations. Green Book made me not care if I watched the Best Picture winner for the year, but it wasn't actually the movie that made me realize that being Oscar nominated didn't make a good movie. I've never seen Green Book. Maybe, despite the problems with the way the story is told, it's a well-made movie. I don't know. The movie that made me do a double take was actually Bohemian Rhapsody. I know some people really like that movie, and that's awesome, but I personally thought it was pretty bad. I thought it was formulaic, the story was washed out to make it more appealing, and it just wasn't that well made overall, except for the Live Aid sequence at the end. If anyone's curious about that perspective, there's a pretty well-known video about why that movie's editing didn't deserve to win the Oscar, and I'll link that in the description. But regardless of whether you agree with my opinion, this was the first time I found myself thinking, wow, I don't think this is a good movie, but it's nominated for Best Picture. A radical thought, I know, but I was very slow to come around to this concept. Well, this has been a very long-winded personal history in order to get around to the point that a maybe award season is not super great. Thank you for watching. Just kidding. I am going to talk about it more, but I do acknowledge that this is not exactly a groundbreaking point. But I also think that 2020 has really brought a lot of these issues to the forefront, so it's worth talking about them now, however obvious they might be. I also keep saying that they're obvious, but a lot of people don't pay as much attention to this stuff as I do, so maybe it's not always obvious. I am just bad at varying my vocabulary in these videos. Anyway, 2020. Obviously, there it is again, the state of the world meant that fewer movies came out in 2020 than normal, and that most of the movies that did come out were on streaming services or video on demand. I think more movies did come out than some people realize, especially in regards to awards-type movies that premiered at revised versions of film festivals or that were obtained by distribution companies at festivals before everything shut down. So there are slim pickings in comparison to other years, but no one is desperate enough to nominate Sonic the Hedgehog for Best Picture. We're going to start with the Golden Globes because I started scripting this video before the Oscar nominations came out, so I couldn't possibly start with the Oscars. A fun fact about my writing process is that as I was writing this video, I googled Golden Globes 2021 and discovered that they were in fact starting in 30 minutes, even though I had literally no idea that they were happening that night. So basically, you could take everything I say in this video with a grain of salt. Now, no one takes the Golden Globes very seriously. You might know that if you've ever watched the ceremony and seen a very drunk celebrity go up and accept an award.
Took a Valium tonight?
Sometimes it seems that serious, challenging, weird movies are like exotic birds.
Look how drunk Glenn Close is.
That tends to make it more enjoyable in terms of entertainment value, but this year in particular, it also means that the nominees are even more questionable than usual. I feel like I'm using the word questionable a lot because I don't want to say problematic because I know that makes some people roll their eyes. So yes, another repetitive language warning for this video. Let's get into the problems. The way I see it, there are three major problems surrounding awards season: the ceremonies themselves, the quality of the nominees, and the representation in the nominees. Let's start with the ceremonies because I think it's the least egregious, even though that's been up for debate in recent years. The most basic criticism of awards season that you can make is that it's just a bunch of rich and famous people congratulating each other for being rich and famous, which, like, yeah, sure, if you aren't interested in award season because of that, that's totally fine and valid. I personally think it's super fun when an underdog or a new person to the industry or someone who is overdue for awards recognition wins. So personally, that argument doesn't hold a ton of weight for me, but I get it. Another common one is the sexism of the red carpet, where men get to talk about what auteurs they are, and women get to talk about how much weight they lost to fit into a dress.
What are you wearing? We gotta know. Vision in red, a vision in blue.
Wait, who did your dress?
So I started watching your show, Barry, the 5th episode. I was on the plane, and I was like, oh, I have to go back and watch every one.
Do you actually wear the shoes that you're wearing tonight for the rehearsal?
And again, totally valid, and I fully support the women who are calling out interviewers for asking those questions, but it's not enough to ruin award shows for me, and I do like seeing what everyone wears. It's fun. Some people also don't like how political celebrities get during their acceptance speeches, which, like, celebrities are people too, and they also care about the state of the world we live in, so they can do what they want. This year's Golden Globes was actually pretty apolitical, all things considered, aside from Jane Fonda's speech, but it's Jane Fonda. What do you expect? The controversy surrounding the ceremonies that's been biggest in the past few years has been the host. To summarize really quickly, Kevin Hart was supposed to host the 2019 Oscars until he came under fire for some unsavory old tweets. So he stepped down from hosting and was never replaced. So the Oscars haven't had a host for the past few years. The Golden Globes do still have hosts, and they've been fine. There was the weird pairing of Andy Samberg and Sandra Oh that just didn't make a lot of sense, even though I enjoy them both separately.
Wondering why the two of us are hosting together.
And the reason is we're the only 2 people left in Hollywood who haven't gotten in trouble for saying something offensive.
And Ricky Gervais hosted last year despite coming under fire for some inappropriate jokes during previous hosting gigs. So, like, that's not great.
I've changed. Not as much as Bruce Jenner, obviously. Now Caitlyn Jenner, of course. What a year she's had. She became a role model for trans people everywhere, showing great bravery in breaking down barriers and destroying stereotypes. She didn't do a lot for women drivers, but...
Amy Poehler and Tina Fey hosted this year for the 4th time. I've genuinely really enjoyed when they've hosted in the past.
Gravity is nominated for Best Film. It's the story of how George Clooney would rather float away into space and die than spend one more minute with a woman his own age.
And they were announced to be hosting this year a full year in advance. In the time since they were announced, Tina Fey came under some fire for the use of blackface in 30 Rock, which is not a great look. On the one hand, there's the point that maybe 2 white women aren't the best choice for hosts in a year where race has been at the forefront of discussion across the country. On the other hand, it's been a bad year. It's nice to be genuinely entertained for a few minutes by 2 funny women. So it could be better, it could be worse. I don't really know. I don't have a conclusion here. I think all award shows should just model themselves after the Film Independent Spirit Awards, which, hot take, have produced some of the best award shows moment in recent years. Let's move on to the quality of the movies that are being nominated. This is why I personally think the Golden Globes are a bit of a joke. They have their Best Picture Drama and Best Picture Musical or Comedy categories separate, and there are just kind of not really 5 musicals or comedies that deserve to be nominated most years, although even they did not dignify Cats with the Best Picture nomination. It leads to movies like The Martian being nominated as comedies because they contain more than 5 jokes and have a better chance to win in that category. This year, it led to nominations for The Prom and Music. Oh boy. I've actually seen The Prom, so let's start there. Again, if you liked this movie, that's awesome. I'm really happy for you. I thought it was super bad, and there are quite a few people who agree with me. It's poorly written, poorly acted in a lot of cases, and somehow both too colorful and too flat in its direction and design. I won't get too much into it because I'm sure this is already going to be a long video and I have a lot of complaints. But long story short, neither it nor James Corden deserve to be nominated. Like, I personally thought The Half of It, another Netflix original movie that came out last year, was a better queer teen representation and all around a better movie. But The Prom had famous faces, so it got the nomination. Speaking of representation, though, if you don't know the controversy behind Music, the short version is that it's a film directed by the singer Sia, who claimed it was a love letter to the autistic community. The autistic community, however, condemned the casting of a neurotypical actor in an autistic role and the portrayal of restraint of an autistic child, among other things, and Sia did not take this criticism well. If you want to hear more about it, I'm going to link to a few videos in the description where autistic people explain the problems they had with the movie. I do understand that this was a year where there weren't too many comedies or musicals to pick from, but this is a movie that is actively harmful to a community that is so rarely represented and even more rarely represented well in media. Tina Fey and Amy Poehler did actually call out the HFPA for nominating it, but that doesn't change the fact that it was given a platform through award shows, and that's just really not okay. I'll also quickly call out the fact that Minari won the Golden Globe for Best Foreign Language Film. This isn't a problem in quality. Minari is a good movie, but it's weird that it was nominated in this category when it's not fully in a foreign language, and that category is typically the only chance for a foreign film to win a Golden Globe, while Minari is an American film that's partially in Korean. I know that there were also a lot of complaints on the TV side of things, particularly with Emily in Paris getting nominations and I Will Destroy You getting snubbed, but I'm not as up to date on TV shows, so I'm going to stick with movies for this video. On the flip side, the Golden Globes did get some positive representation points because 3 whole women were nominated for Best Director. 3 in 1 year. Absolutely unheard of. But what does it really say that it took a year where there were slim pickings for movies to nominate more female directors than male ones? A lot to think about. Anyway, I watched the Golden Globes. It was fine. Amy and Tina were enjoyable enough, given the awkwardness of them being in 2 different locations. I'm glad Daniel Kaluuya won. I had no idea he was British until I heard his acceptance speech. I'm glad Chadwick Boseman won. He fully deserved to, and his wife's speech made me cry. I'm glad that the Best Director award did not go to a white man. That's most of what I have to say. So, let's get to the Oscars. One side effect of not having a ton of movies come out in a year is that there wasn't a whole lot of room for surprises, although there were a few snubs. A few Black-led movies, including One Night in Miami, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and Da 5 Bloods, that were Best Picture contenders, were all shut out from that category. Aaron Sorkin's Trial of the Chicago 7 got Best Picture and Best Screenplay nominations, but not Best Director, which is pretty unusual. The slot that was expected to go to Sorkin instead went to Danish director Thomas Vinterberg for his Best International Feature nominee another round. My personal favorite weird surprise is that both Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya were nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Judas and the Black Messiah. If the person who played Judas and the person who played the Black Messiah were both supporting, who was the lead? Very silly, Academy voters. Anyway, like the Golden Globes, the Oscar nominations did make history in terms of diversity. 2 women were nominated for Best Director for the first time ever, including Chloe Zhao, who is the first woman of color to ever be nominated in that category. 2 men of Asian descent were nominated in the Best Actor category for the first time, including Steven Yeun, who's the first Asian American actor to be nominated, and Riz Ahmed, the first Muslim actor to be nominated. And 6 of the 20 acting nominees went to Black actors, the most in history. Objectively, all of that is awesome. But like I said with the Golden Globes, I do think it says something that it only happened in a year when the pool to choose from for nominees was much smaller than usual. Also, this is the 93rd Academy Awards. It took 93 years for two women to be nominated for Best Director, or for than a quarter of the acting nominees to be Black. That's pretty bleak, if we're being honest. I'm recording this video before the actual Oscars ceremony, so I can't speak to the winners, but like with the nominations, I don't expect too many shockers because generally the Oscars are pretty predictable. I used to be super into reading award season predictions to the point that by Oscars night, I knew almost exactly what was going to happen, even in categories I knew literally nothing about, like Best Documentary Short. That's not to say that there are never surprises. In part because the Oscars are so predictable, it is genuinely surprising when a movie breaks the formula that the Academy normally follows. If you looked at the history of the Oscars, you would never guess that Parasite would have won Best Picture last year. Not only was it an international film in a language other than English, but like I said, it had no acting nominations, something which is extremely rare for Best Picture winners. Statistically speaking, it had a snowball's chance in hell of claiming the top prize. And yet it did, and deservedly so, in my opinion. And the predictable choice winning isn't necessarily a bad thing. Nomadland is probably the favorite to win right now for this year, and I adored that movie. I would happily see it win. But I also adored Promising Young Woman, which is such a different film than Nomadland that it feels silly to even try comparing them. If you take away all the very real issues with diversity, representation, and politics that are intertwined with award season, that's still a gripe I have. I think it's great that these movies are being celebrated, but it also seems insane to definitively declare one movie, one director, or one performance the best of the year when that's such a subjective thing. We'll keep doing it, and the industry will keep ascribing meaning to it, so it is what it is. But I guess at the end of the day, what I'm saying is take these things as seriously as you want to. If your favorite movie of the year was a CGI-filled blockbuster that has no shot at even getting nominated, that's awesome. If the Best Picture winner was genuinely the best picture of the year in your opinion, that's awesome too. If you liked a little bit of everything, even better. But regardless of how you feel about award season, it's undeniable that it does hold weight in the world of movies. And as long as that's true, it's important to keep calling out the problems and holding the institutions behind the ceremonies responsible for those problems. Because those problems expand outward from these prestige movies to the industry as a whole. And the stories that are told in movies matter. That's why I like movies so much, and that's why movies are able to be meaningful to so many people. So I hope that we can keep celebrating these films, but I also hope that these films and the industry as a whole keep evolving so that they're able to reflect the world around them in honest, impactful, and entertaining ways. That's my thoughts on awards season 2020. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you liked this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all soon with another one. Thanks.